I know.
So yours is the same, aren't they supposed to be the same age? Yeah.
Yeah, they're in the same grade.
Are they?
Mhm.
When that happens, when we're 14, 15, and all of a sudden. Yeah.
All right.
Love her trip to New Orleans.
Did she,
Loved it.
she looked like she was there.
So we are starting just a few minutes late because of computer and railroad issues, but we are starting. So I will call to order this meeting, July 28th meeting of the Legislative Committee of the Racine Unified School District Board. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Allen. Mrs. Barbian,
Yes.
Mrs. Doxy, Mr. O'Connell,
Here.
Ms. Villar.
Here.
Okay, and then Mr. Bellagio is also.
All right. Do we have a quorum? I think so. Okay. So then we will roll right into the approval of the minutes of the June 23rd meeting, 2025. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I move to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
And I will second them. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
I,
Opposed? Motion carries. Minutes are approved. So next up is the consideration of proposed state legislation to decouple public school and voucher school funding. So attached in board docs was a essay from Ann Chapman, the WASBO, that is the School Associations of Business Officials research director. And she prepared this essay because several times over the past several years, legislation has been introduced in Madison to decouple vouchers from the tax base of local districts. So what is happening now, and in particular in our case in Racine, is the state provides voucher students a amount of funds, which I believe currently is like $11,000 per student. And through an operation that's in the statute, that money, the 11,000 or so dollars for each student, goes to the voucher families to pay their school. It is then taken from the district because supposedly we do not have those students in the district any longer. But the statute provides for us to increase our tax levy to cover the cost of the voucher. So indirectly, the amount of the local voucher students goes on the tax levy as if the district was raising the money for the vouchers. This, I'll be blunt, is a form of money laundering on the part of the state, so that the tax impact of vouchers is obscured. The suggestion has been made that instead of this roundabout mechanism of funding vouchers, the state just pay for vouchers out of state general revenue. That's the legislature's annual budget money. It's made up of income tax and sales tax and all the other ways the state raises money. And at first blush, that might be appealing because, it then gets us out of transactions with the voucher program. But it raises some other concerns, such as right now, essentially, we are protected against financial losses due to the vouchers because of this transaction whereby aids flow to the voucher program, but we get a backstop in the tax base. Would we be fiscally hurt if they decoupled from the current arrangement? The other thing is concerns about things like right now the voucher program does not have the same level of scrutiny and accountability that school districts have. There is no voucher school board that has to go before the public to justify what is happening. And this would further distance the voucher program from scrutiny. Organizations like WASBO and WASB, the SWASA, have not taken a position on this yet, but they are very concerned, and it is an item on their agendas, and are looking to the local boards for some guidance as to what we think are issues, and if we feel strongly enough to take a position, what would the position be? So I have brought this to the board, I think, for a couple of reasons. One is to hear from my fellow members what our concerns are. What are questions going forward that we would want answered about this, with the intention to relay that back to WASB and the other organizations. Also, what factual information do we need? Because I assume, and I think these other organizations assume, that this will not go away. It has been reintroduced several legislative sessions. There does seem to be interest among some group of legislators to do this. And so I expect later in this new legislative term, we will see this come back. With that lengthy introduction, what are concerns that you board members may have? And I'm assuming that we will have to do some research and then bring this back for the discussion. Anyone want to start? Jane.
Brian, I thought we discussed this a little bit before the WASB conference in January, and we said no to it. And we said no to it because we weren't going to support it. It was one of the things that we had to vote on at WASB. And I thought because Jeff Sirik had talked to us about how it might hurt us fiscally.
Well,
And Jeff's not here today.
yeah.
But that's a question I definitely want answered. And I have a feeling that is what's holding back other school districts as well.
So this was in anticipation of the delegate assembly in
Yes.
January. Okay.
And I'm sorry to say I did not hear the results of it. I just assumed it did not pass, but I could be wrong about that. I have the booklet at home. I can look it up.
And I have to apologize. I did not think to look at that. And my memory, as far as us taking a position on it, just is there. It may be so.
But the budget's changed too since then.
Mhm.
So maybe it's not a factor anymore. I don't know.
Yeah. I do know, as a Racinian, a city of Racine resident, I have been getting an insert in my tax bill which breaks out the voucher levy from the overall school board levy. But that is not, that's an extra. I assume that we're providing the data to the city to prepare that little insert. I don't, it's not mandated by the state that that be done. Okay, so one thing to research is did we take a position as part of the delegate assembly prep? Okay,
And is it still fiscally responsible for us to decouple this? Because at that time when we voted, it was not, according to Jeff Zurich. Do you remember, Soren?
Yeah, generally that has been what he has shared with the funding formula. We get, and again, this is where he needs to come in and kind of explain this, but we get aided on the overall number. If that number were to drop by, $30 million or whatever it is, there is a decrease in our aid. Where the aid comes from, it would cause us to increase our levy on the community. So there is state aid formula is incredibly complex, but there is a bit of a challenge there. So I would want him to articulate that better to all of us, but that's my understanding still as of today.
And find out if it's still there. But the budget
I will
change.
follow up with him on that and get kind of something.
Poor Jeff,
concrete.
I mean, he's dealing with budget changes every day.
Yeah, he is.
Any other questions for research? Yes.
So I'm taking a broader view here. I'm not sure. I know a number of groups have kind of latched onto this decoupling idea as a way to express their frustration with so many tax dollars going to private voucher schools. I'm not sure decoupling is going to solve the issues that really I think are behind this. As you mentioned, financially, it may not, the information we've gotten previously, I think, is that it's just wouldn't be much of a hit one way or the other, kind of as a wash. Which means decoupling wouldn't really affect us financially. And we would still have lots of tax dollars going to voucher schools. It just wouldn't be washed through the public school system. I think the bigger issue is the fact that the voucher program has grown significantly over the past 10 years or more, that the income level has increased and increased and increased so that many, many more families now qualify for it. I think the bigger question is what can we or should we do to address that issue? I'm not sure decoupling addresses that, but I'd be happy to hear more information about that.
All right. Mr. Blasio, go ahead.
It sounds like to me like it's checks and balances pretty much. It's based. I'm always a firm believer money should follow the students wherever they go, and if this is the option that they're choosing to do, the bigger question is why. It's the education basically being provided, so they found a better alternative. And honestly, I think that I would say no. I think that everything should remain the same. If we want to pull more students away from those kind of programs, we got to provide a better education. That's what it comes to. Big classrooms, stuff like that. As a parent, I don't want my kid in a classroom of upper 30s or whatever. Like it's been known to happen. But I would say no for sure. I mean, it's
As I understand this would not from the family side, perspective from the family side, the voucher program would not change. So there would still be vouchers under decoupling. The family would be making the decision as where the student would attend. But the money is really where the source of the funds, it becomes state general tax base and not local property tax base. However, is that making the financial situation of education worse overall for maybe both programs or for us? Or, those are some of the questions, I think. The fiscal impact is really a key piece of this, with some people feeling decoupling would be beneficial and some people thinking not. So, I think this is one where, as was said, we get some feedback from Mr. Sarek on what it means now, how it looks now, and whether there's a fiscal downside to us in decoupling. And then there are these ancillary issues of accountability. Does this, further obscure the fact that the program is growing? I'll mention one thing which has been voiced. The state aid formula has an element in it called equalization. And it was the state aid flows to districts in a way that if you're a property tax poor district, it actually raises the amount you receive to try to equalize the amount you can expend on your students, and so that they are not underfunded relative to districts on average or some of the wealthier districts. It balances because some communities have a lot of property tax value and some don't. As the voucher program has grown and it's kind of disconnected from the other aspects of education funding, the amount of money that's being made available to the students under the voucher program is not proportional to the amount of money that the districts have. This idea of equalization doesn't exist. So much so that there are concerns among some people that it's a potential lawsuit by violating the state statute regarding equalization. I think that's part of the motive for decoupling. But again, this is one of those kind of vague aspects. But it would be another question for us to look into prior to taking a position. This equalization, is it at risk because of what's been going on? Okay.
Can I ask a clarifying question on that before we move on?
Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm just trying to understand what you just said because it is so complicated. So equalization payments, different districts receive different amounts based on their property tax income, correct? Okay. However, students from every district, whether they're wealthy or do not have as much tax base, get the same amount of voucher money to go to a private school. Is that right so far?
The equalization aspect of the formula was intended to balance what individual students would have as their account and reduce the dependence on whether you were a high property tax district or a low property tax district, and balance among the public school districts how much is available on a per student basis. It was not anticipated to apply to vouchers because it predates vouchers. But in tweaking the system, this imbalance has been increased. And I think that is something that has become a legal concern among parties.
Okay. So I'm still,
By the way, I should mention that one of the reasons equalization came forward was there was a lawsuit that the disparities were so great that equal treatment no longer existed in the state. And in settling the lawsuit, my understanding is this bill or the law was introduced and enacted to address these inequities. And now the evolution of the system is causing that to be called into question again. So,
so would decoupling kind of expose the lack of equity?
I think that's
That's-
the concern.
Okay.
Yeah, that there is an inequity. It's growing, and it would make it more obvious that some students are receiving more money than others.
Okay.
All right. So anything else? Ms. Doxy, you're here. I don't know if you were caught up with this discussion. Do you have any concerns about decoupling? And we're building a list of questions for research to come back to the committee.
Not at this time, so I'm just gonna watch it at the end.
Okay. All right. What I would suggest is if anything occurs to people on the committee or on the board in general, between now and our next meeting, please get that to me, send me an email, and I will, in particular, work with Mr. Sarek. We've got a lengthy list of things for him to do. He just walked in, and I will. We'll have that ready for further discussion when that meeting comes around. Okay. If there are no other questions or discussion on this item, we'll move on to the 2025-26 legislative agenda. One of the things that we have typically done, especially in the fall, is have some sort of meeting with our legislators. We have been, because the state budget was unclear for so long, we didn't want to try and schedule something into the midst of that. But I think the way is clear now to have schedule a legislative meeting. What occurred to me was perhaps doing something along the lines of a invited show and tell of some of our new buildings, since the buildings will be ready by the end of August. Any reaction to that?
Yeah. Okay.
All right. All right. I will work with Mr. Myers and Mr. Gajewski to see what we can do, which buildings to feature, or we could do anything from choose one building and do a presentation there to put everybody on a bus and roll them around. So we'll have to choose between those. But I think showing off the products of the facility master plan would be very helpful and probably attract interest and get the legislators to come. Mm-hmm. And as usual, all the board would be invited as well. Okay. Lastly is our next meeting date and agenda. So it would be the follow-up on these two items we've discussed today. The next meeting would fall on the 25th of August by operation of the calendar. I am not going to be available that week, the end of August. Other suggestions?
Well, I
Ms.
was,
Doxy?
I was thinking that that might be one that we might just not do, because I know August is a very, for governance, because it would be the same day. I was thinking that maybe that might be one that we don't do in August. Just I know that August is very tough for everybody, and it's going to be right before school starts again. So when we get to the governance part of it, I was going to suggest potentially skipping August, or alternatively finding a different date for it. But I know people are pretty busy in August.
Yeah, depending on the timing of these items, and again, nothing has been introduced as pending right now on decoupling or it's expected, but it hasn't happened yet. Likewise, we probably have some time regarding scheduling with the legislators on some session. So we can consider whether we skip the month or and then just revert to the September date or what. I think we'll have to work collectively on rescheduling. So expect an email on people's availabilities for a future date. Any other items to come before the committee? If not, we've exhausted our agenda and we could adjourn. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you. And I will second if it has to be a committee member to second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.